you're starting out, that can be really difficult because nobody knows who you are. And so how do you get these people or these websites to link back to you? One of the really, really great ways in the beginning is to join a community, because there's sort of 3 benefits to that. So the first is that if you join a community, especially one that's really relevant, then you can have people who can be beta testers for you when your product is really early and you're still working out the bugs. The second thing is that if it's a relevant community, then you can be featured or get interviewed. And so that's a really great way for you just to get your product out there, and then also get people understanding what you're doing and getting feedback. And then, of course, backlinking within that article. So one example of this is actually probably Startup Grind. You know, if you go to an event, then you can have all these people who are entrepreneurs or maybe like at least interested in the startup space, and they could potentially be user testers for you. So that's a really great example of that. And if you're wondering how to actually get featured in the community, these are examples. So these are a bunch of newsletters and communities that I'm a part of or that I subscribe to. And in most of the newsletters that I get, there's some line in there that actually says, you know, do you want to be featured, or are you building something really cool, or do you have a startup? Reach out to us and get featured. So whenever you're on a site or if you're subscribed to something, look for that in the newsletter or on the website, because that's definitely something that you should leverage. And the great thing is that as you start to get some of these features, you can use that to build up to get more features. So these are, some that I've actually done before, like indie hackers. So if you are going to become a part of a community, there are some best practices. So one is that obviously you should contribute. So a lot of times the communities are based around discussion. So you should give back something and not just show up to try and take. The second thing is that, you know, these communities, they always want to feature a unique story. So everybody obviously has a unique story. They have a unique angle. And so you should definitely try and use that so that it makes it more interesting and engaging and people actually want to feature you. The third thing is that even early on as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of different experiences that you can share about your journey and what you've learned. So make sure that you include like lessons that other people can take away from that. Fourth is that you should obviously be real. So I think that less so in the Vancouver community, but I know definitely in San Francisco where I spend a lot of time, there's this kind of need to make it seem like, oh, you're always just doing amazing. And it's not very authentic. So if you're going to belong to a community, then you want to be real and you want to be genuine with people and kind of share your struggles. The next thing is that if you do get featured, in order to maximize that feature, you want to make sure that you're promoting your content on all that you can. So, you know, share that article with your friends, with your family, ask them to share, because you want to make sure that it gets distribution, because the more that you share, the more successful that article will be. And then finally, be responsive. So if, let's say, for example, a community does feature you, you want to make sure that if people are posting questions or comments, that you're responding to that as well, because then that's a great way to get invited back, or for some other site or person that wants to interview you to see that you actually are being really genuine and that you're trying to give back as well. So the next thing, so this is actually a really great tip. I don't know if anyone has heard of HARO before, which stands for Help a Reporter. So it's basically a marketplace that reporters or people who are doing research or want information for articles will go onto. They'll post a request for information or resources. And then the other side is that you can sign on to become a source. And so this is a really great place to actually get PR, because a lot of journalists or reporters or writers will go on to here because they're writing an article about something really specific, and they need people to act as sources for the information for them to get it. So for you as an entrepreneur or as a startup, this is a really great place to get free PR, because you know, PR is really expensive and it's even hard to get noticed organically for someone to feature you. So this is basically like a way to make sure that you kind of have control of whether or not someone features you. So it's really easy. You just go on and sign up to become a source. and then you respond to it. So the benefits of doing this is that obviously, you could get featured, you could get a backlink, and then also it's something that you could point to in the future and say to someone, hey, I was quoted in this article, or hey, my startup was featured in this article. And then it just positions you as a subject matter expert in that particular topic. So here's an example of what the email actually sounds like. Awesome, yeah. Just responding to Howard's comment. This is really, really great. And the best part is that it's actually free. So there really is no reason why you should try it, because there's no loss to you. So this is what an email looks like that comes from HARO. You can subscribe to different topics. So for me, because I am in the finance and crypto space, I subscribe to business and finance. So there's different topics that they'll have. So it'll just usually be like a one-line query that gives you a little bit of information. And then when you click on it and you actually go into it, it will give you a little bit more information, like the when the deadline is. So the deadline is when you have to submit the information. The media outlet is which publication it's going to be published in. And then the query is actually more details about what they need. So here, for example, on the right-hand side, this query is looking to interview female entrepreneurs, and they want to feature female entrepreneurs in a business series. And then the requirements are that it has to be an existing company, obviously female, and then looking for startups and small businesses. So the reason why I wanted to show this is because it's really important when you're doing this, especially for any kind of PR, request that you want to look at. You want to know what your goal is. So if your goal is to just kind of get any backlinks, then it doesn't really matter what this media outlet is that you're writing to. If your goal is that you want to be known as a subject matter expert in a very specific area, then it's going to be really important what the topic is that you're responding to, as well as the media outlet that you're going to be published in. So for example, if let's say, for example, I'm looking for very specific backlinks, and I want to become a subject matter expert only in crypto, this probably is not going to be a really good fit for me, because one, I don't know what the media outlet is, because it says anonymous, which is probably not a good sign, because I don't know what their SEO relevance is. I don't know how high their domain authority is, and I don't know if it's actually relevant to my space or what I want to be known for. Here's another one. So this one is about cryptocurrency, so what it is and how it works. And the topic makes sense, and it's in an area that I would want to respond to. But then when I look at the media outlet, it says Elks Magazine, and then when I actually went to go look at that, it's a hunting magazine about elks, which is not super relevant to probably where my target users are going to be. So it's probably not something I'm going to want to respond to. So again, thinking about these things when you're responding to HARO, because they do take time. And so you want to make sure that you understand what your goal is so that you can actually achieve those goals. Because, if you want to be in a specific publication and that publication is not right for you, then you probably don't want to do that. And the nice thing about HARO is that there's these requests every day. So even if you miss one, there probably will be another one that will come up that's really relevant to you. So some of the best practices if you're going to submit to HARO. So in the response that you send back, so you always want to quote this summary line that says, for example, on the right-hand side, the number 2 where it says summary, you want to include that in your subject line so that the reporter knows what you're responding to. And then you want to also let them know why you're the best source. So, why are you the subject matter expert in this area? What kind of experience or knowledge do you have that makes them, that they should trust you for that? Also, you should make sure that your answer is thorough, but succinct, because they get a lot of these responses and they're not going to read through, like 3 or 5 or 10 paragraphs. So you want to make sure that you answer everything that they're looking for, but do it in a way that is like brief and thorough. And then the next thing is that you want to have a unique angle. So, you don't want to just regurgitate something that they can find online. Ideally, you'll bring your experience or your knowledge to it and have that kind of spin on it, because then for them, they're wanting to include something that is different. So they don't want to just necessarily always write about the same thing. They want some kind of unique angle on it. And so that's why if you can think of a way that leverages your thoughts or your opinions, then that's kind of the best way to approach it. Next, there's a deadline on it. But what I find is that if you respond really quickly, then that's best, because they get inundated. And sometimes even if there's still time before the deadline, but they might just like look at the first 10 or 50 that they receive and then just use those ones. I've already went over this, so include the summary title in your pitch, just because it makes it really easy for them to search for it and then also know what the request is about. And then finally, so in the email, what you want to do is you want to include kind of like an about me. So just like a quick blurb about your bio and why you're the best person, and then contact information, and then kind of any relevant links. So if, let's say, for example, they are doing an article about a topic that you've written about before, then that's probably something you want to include. Or if they want to write about a social media related thing, then you probably want to include your social media link. So just look at what the request is and make sure that you're including the best information so that they don't have to do a lot of work to do that. Because the other thing that they'll do too is that if they are interested in you, they'll probably Google you or look you up online. And if you include links to all your relevant like social media profiles or anything like that, then you're just making it easier for them to make sure to include you. So next thing is submitting guest articles or blogs. So this is kind of similar to the HARO one, where you're just, it's a great way for you to get free PR, basically. You build up brand awareness, especially if it's a relevant publication. You become a subject matter expert in that area. And then, of course, you get backlinks. So these are some examples of publications that I've published to, and they're really great. One thing that I would suggest is on Medium, there are a lot of publications. So depending on what your area is, whether it's like e-commerce or finance or travel, there's a lot of different publications under Medium for that. So the best thing to do is actually to Google Medium publication plus whatever your niche is. So if it was like top Medium publications for travel, then you want to make sure that you are submitting to the top ones, because then that's how you're going to get the most lift from it, because those are kind of will get the most views and probably have the best SEO. So it makes sense for you to kind of focus on the bigger publications and then work backwards. So on all of the publications, they usually will have a page about what is required to actually submit a story. So just make sure that you read them and then make sure that you're actually meeting those. But I found that it's actually pretty easy to submit a story. I don't think I've ever submitted a story and had it decline. So I'd say that this is a really, really great way to get in front of users, and then also just to get your name out there. So when you're doing this, some best practices, having an original content. You want to write about something that you know really well and that's interesting and hasn't really been done before. And then, related to this is that you want to have a unique angle. So even though, let's say, there are a lot of topics about travel, maybe you come up with something that is unique to travel. Like, for example, best resorts for people who have a dog and are traveling with their dog. So, it might be a little bit more niche, but it could be really interesting. And if that publication hasn't published that before, that might be something that they're more likely to publish because it's new content. The other thing is that you want to understand who the readers for that publication are, and then adapt your language and also the topic to it. Because, if it's a really technical article and it's for, say, a marketing audience, that's probably not really going to make any sense. So you want to adapt your terminology and your writing style to whoever the readers are on that publication. And then you can look at other articles that have done really well on the site and then see what people are interested in, because that's a really good gauge to see what kind of topics you should write about. So, for example, on the startup, they obviously write about entrepreneurship stuff, but they write about, fundraising, growth, marketing. These are all topics that have done really well. So most likely, if you write something within those categories, then you have a higher chance of getting published, just because they know that that's the type of stuff their readers like to read. So have a great title. Obviously nothing super clickbaity, but that's a little bit eye-catching as well. So you want to make it exciting, and you want someone to want to actually read through, because people are inundated with this stuff. And then finally, one thing that is interesting to do is a little bit of a growth hack is if you reference or link other people in your article, then you can actually write to them afterwards and say, hey, I published this article and I quoted you, or I referenced your article. Let me know if this is helpful for you, or would love if you could share. And then that could also be another way for you to just get more distribution for your article. And it could also be a really good way, like if it's somebody that you really like or respect, to be able to connect with them and even start asking for their advice or opinion on something that you need help with. So this next topic, which is like your website or your blog, is more relevant for people who are mobile first or mobile only, because what I find is that a lot of people who have a mobile app don't really think at all about their web presence, which is a mistake, because, even people on a mobile app are still searching on Google for things. So the reason why you should focus on, so if you have a website, but you don't have a blog, then, these are reasons why you should think about creating one. So SEO obviously is like a big thing, because you can basically optimize your SEO within your blog that isn't so restrictive as your website. You can post updates there, and then you can also do internal backlinks to other content within your site. And that actually helps with Google indexing for your SEO, because they like when you do internal backlinking and external backlinking. So that's linking to other content within your website as well as externally. So I think I'm trying to think. I'm not sure if Annie's app is mobile only, but some kind of interesting stats I wanted to share, just if anyone is an app first or app only, is that even if you are mobile first or mobile only, most of the searches still start on Google, and most of them are on mobile. So this is something for you guys to think about as well, whether you're web-based or mobile-based. If most people are searching on Google search but on mobile, then that means that you really need to optimize your experience for mobile. So one of the things that we actually do is that we run A/B tests on our website every week, and then we have a web, like a desktop web A/B test, and then we have a mobile web A/B test, because they're different, and we A/B test both of them. So that's something that you guys should think about as well if you have web, because the experiences are different and you need to make sure that it's optimized for both. The other thing is that when people are searching on mobile, their intent is pretty high, because over 50% of people actually end up finding a new product or service when they're searching on their phone. So you really want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that high intent to buy or to subscribe or to use your product. Oh, sorry. Yes, I kind of assumed that everybody knew what A/B testing was. I can talk about that probably closer to the end as well, because I think there's some tools that I'll suggest for that. And then finally, the other thing is that, so 75% of smartphone users always turn to mobile search first. So if you do have a mobile app, it's still really important for you to think about mobile search, because you want to make sure that you're coming up in those search rankings on Google search. So, and the interesting thing is that Google search on desktop versus on mobile actually returns different results. So you need to make sure that you understand what each is returning depending on what platform your product is on. So you want to make sure that you're looking at both of them and optimizing for both as well. So some things about the blog. I know some of you guys are just kind of starting out, so this will probably be relevant for you. On the website, you want to make sure that you have a clear call to action. So what is it that you want people to do? And you don't want to have too many calls to action because it should be pretty obvious what you want the user to do. And then this is something that you should always test too, because I'm sure you guys have read a lot of these articles about kind of like testing different buttons and things like that. But there are so many different things that you can test on a website, and you should always be doing tests every week or every 2 weeks, depending on how much traffic you have, so that you can always optimize for this. And YC actually has a video that's really, really good that talks about sort of the benchmarks for specific industries and what that conversion rate looks like. So you want to make sure that you understand what your conversion rate is for your industry as well. Second tip is, so if you do have a mobile app, you want to make sure that you have a link to download your mobile app on your web page, so that's easy for them. Because what we discovered was that a lot of people didn't realize that we had a mobile app, and so they would do the web experience, and it wasn't necessarily the best experience. So kind of understand where you want to direct people to and make sure that you're directing them to wherever you want. Third thing is tracking and attribution. So I don't know if everyone here uses Google Analytics for their website, but that's sort of like the basic level of tracking, but you want to at least make sure that you're doing that. So that will kind of tell you about your website visitors, where they're coming from, and then a little bit of a funnel. But then if you want to go beyond that, there's a lot of different marketing analytics tools that you can get that actually kind of follows them all throughout the funnel. So, you know, from sign up to pressing on a button to conversion and then beyond. So depending on what your product is, you want to make sure that you understand what you need to track and what kind of tools you need to put in place to actually track that. So for e-commerce, for example, that funnel is really important, from, you know, someone landing on your page to clicking on an item, to them putting it in the cart, to them abandoning the cart, and then coming back. So those are all things that you want to track. The other thing is that you want to always be testing, like I said. So this isn't just, you know, things on your website, but you want to be testing things all the time. So we A/B test pretty much everything in our company, whether it's like email copy or a push notification or the user experience, so onboarding and things like that. You just want to make sure that you're always testing. But in order to do that and make sure that you understand what is most effective, you need to make sure you have tracking and attribution in place. So earlier, and one really good tool that we use, which is a marketing analytics platform, is called Amplitude. And it's it does require some technical setup. So you do need somebody to actually do the setup for you. But once you actually have that in place, it's amazing because it will track every single interaction that a user ever has on your site or your app. And then you can actually build funnels that way. So you can look at different things like your retention or what path a user takes from the time that they visit your site to when they leave, and you know how often they're coming back, what features they're using or what they're clicking on. So it's a really, really amazing way to actually look further into the performance of your product or your service. And Amplitude actually, so they have a free version, which is pretty robust, but they also have a startup scholarship. So basically, I'm pretty sure for everyone who is here, they would qualify for it, and then you get full access to their product, and it's amazing. I would highly, highly recommend it. If anyone has any questions about Amplitude and how it works, then always email me afterwards. But we use it, and I'm like definitely a customer for life because it's amazing. Okay, so the next thing is that you want to optimize for SEO. So what we do is that we're always looking at what keywords we can change for this. And Google's algorithm is always changing for SEO as well. So you kind of have to keep up to date on that. But this is why having a blog also helps, because you can generate content and try to optimize for SEO that way, because with your website usually it doesn't change too much, whereas with your blog you can always add new stuff or get new people to come in and write content as well, which helps your SEO. And then the final thing is, it seems pretty basic, but I see this missing in a lot of different sites, is you want to have your contact information to make it really easy for people to contact you, and so that you actually look more legitimate and trustworthy. And then your social media information, because most people now, they'll just go to Twitter if they have a complaint or a question, or they might go to Instagram or something. So you want to make sure you make it really, really easy for people to be able to find you. And then it's also social proof, because then people know that, if you have 10,000 followers or something, then you're probably a legit company. Okay, so the next thing is referrals. So if you are a startup, I always recommend that you have a referral program, because referrals are the best and the cheapest way for you to actually get users. And a lot of really successful companies like PayPal, they've grown to where they are because of their referral program. So Dropbox is another example of that. So kind of some things that you want to have when you have a referral program is that you want to make sure that you incentivize people, because obviously, people usually don't do things for free. So there has to be a reason for them to do it. The other thing is that you want to make sure that there's some kind of incentive or benefit to both sides. It doesn't have to be the same for both sides either. And then finally, you want to identify your evangelists. So for anybody who really loves your product or is just like a heavy user, you want to make sure that you know who they are, and then you build a special program around that for them, because they're probably the ones who are most going to go to bat for you and tell everybody about you. So you want to make sure that you're leveraging that. So I put some examples of referral programs here that are pretty successful. So the first on the left-hand top corner is Airbnb's referral program. So this is actually my referral bonus. Every Airbnb host referral bonus is actually different, which is kind of sneaky. But if I refer a new host, I get $460 Canadian. And they only get $33. So if anyone wants to sign up for Airbnb, please use my referral link. No, just joking. But yeah, it's interesting. So you can see how they have this, they've followed the idea that you incentivize both sides, but they've actually heavily weighted it on one side so that the referring host is the one who gets most of it, because they know that most people won't really go to the trouble of doing it unless they get something really good for it. And they also know that the value that they get from each new host far exceeds that, $499 that they're actually paying out for that referral. And that's something that they've obviously tested. So that's something that you need to know for your referral program. And one of the reasons why I actually selected all of these referral programs is that they all are different products and services, because I wanted you to see that basically no matter what your product or service is, there's a way for you to build a referral program around it. So the next one in the middle is, forget what this one is called. I don't remember this company, but what they do is they make these sleeping toys for babies. And so it's a really beloved product and parents really love it. But they say that if, you get, I think, 5 friends to buy a toy, then you get one too. And so it's a really creative way for an e-commerce company to come up with a referral program around a product that they already love. And it's probably something that you're going to do anyway, because with parents or moms in particular, if there's a product that you really, really love that is really helpful for you, you're definitely going to tell your friends about it. And so it's sort of like, well, you're already doing this, so you might as well get something for it. So they've done a really good job of that. The next is on the right. So I'm pretty sure most of you guys are familiar with this, Candy Crush. So if you invite your friends, you get more credits to keep playing in this game. So this is kind of something that we do. We are a game and we have in-game credits. So we give people credits if they refer other people. And then it's just, you know, obviously because they really like playing the game, they want to keep doing it. On the bottom left-hand side, so this is Dropbox's referral program. They actually took a page from PayPal and they used this as a leverage to basically grow really, really quickly. I didn't include PayPal on here, but I think the estimate is that on the referral program, I think they ended up spending $16 million in referral fees. So it's pretty crazy. But by doing that, they were actually able to grow from 0 to 100,000 users in just 1 month. So referral programs do work really, really well. And then the final thing on the right-hand side is Evernote. So if you invite people to Evernote, then you get a premium for a month. So again, you know, these are all very, very different companies with different products and services, but they found really great ways to get people to refer and bring more people in. So some of the things that you want to think about for a referral program is that, again, you want to make sure that you're giving something to both sides. So for the person who's referring, they need to get something. And for the person who's going to be the referee, they need to get something as well. And again, it doesn't have to be the same. A lot of times what companies do is that they'll incentivize the person referring much more than the referee. So the second thing is that you want to make sure you have referral prompts everywhere. So if you think that referrals are going to be a really significant driver of growth for you, you want to make it really, really easy for people to find where to refer and how to do it. So, you know, this is something that you want to test as well. You know, if you put a referral prompt, you know, in certain places, are you more or less likely to get people clicking on that? And there's definitely places that are better than others. So for example, in an e-commerce, you probably don't necessarily want to ask someone to share if they haven't received the product, but you know, maybe if you're like, hey, you know, get 15% off your next purchase if you share your purchase with your friends, then that might be a really good place. Or if they leave a review for you, then that's a really great time to ask for a referral. So you just want to make sure that you understand when you're prompting people to do the referral and making sure that it's after a good experience. So you don't want to ask them when they've had a really bad experience or when they've barely used your app or your product. And again, like you want to make it really easy to share. So a lot of times companies will have, like, for example, if you have a Facebook social share, you want to already have a pre-generated image and copy so that all they have to do is press one button and then they can share it really easily, because every friction point that you add, so if they have to go in and write a caption or, you know, share an image themselves, then they're less likely to do it. But if it's just one button for them to do it, then it's much more likely that they'll actually go through with it. The other thing is that, you know, if you know that there are people who really, really love your product, maybe they buy a lot of it, maybe they're really vocal on social media, or maybe they're an influencer, then you want to make sure that you build out a program for them so that they feel really special and so that they continue to want to refer you. Because, you know, if they have a lot of influence because they have a lot of followers, or maybe they're a mom and they have lots of mommy friends, then that's something that you want to make sure that you leverage and give them a reason to share. And then finally, you want to make sure that you implement tracking. So one of the things that I think is really, really important as a startup, especially in the beginning, because that's the easiest to do, is that you want to implement tracking. So you want to make sure that you understand how successful your referral program is, and you want to understand, you know, out of all the opportunities that someone has to refer you, how many times are they actually taking advantage of that? Are there different channels that drive better engagement or more referrals or more growth? So one of the things that we look at is not just how many people refer us, but we also look at the channel. So we know that Facebook and YouTube, for example, drive the highest conversions in terms of referrals, but then also the most engaged or retained users. So anyone who comes in as a referral through Facebook or YouTube, those users actually are our most engaged users from a referral perspective. So, if you understand these levers, then you can start to focus a little bit more on specific channels that work really well for you, and then you don't focus on the ones that don't work. Or, maybe you test the message or the offer to see what's gonna drive the most conversions. And the other thing that you want to understand with the referral program is with Airbnb, for example, they are paying me personally $460 Canadian plus another $33 to the referee. So they know that their benefit is going to exceed $500 Canadian if I refer a host. So when you do a referral program, you want to make sure that you understand what the customer lifetime value is in exchange for that referral. So you have to do a little bit of testing on this to see what makes sense. So again, understanding which channels are more successful will be really helpful for this, because maybe you can give more to people who are referring on Facebook versus on Instagram, for example, because you know that someone coming in through Facebook is much higher quality than Instagram. Okay, finally, partnerships. So one thing that I think a lot of companies don't use as much as they should is the idea of cross-promotion. So, if you have a company that is in the same space and is doing something not necessarily the same or similar, but kind of in an adjacent and complementary space, then you want to leverage the audience that they've built and then also share yours. Because, if they've already done all of the work of building up an audience that is really applicable to you, then instead of looking at it like it's a competition, then you should just try and use what they've built to grow your own user base. So, you want to find your tribe, find the people who are, again, not direct competitors, but are in an adjacent space where it makes sense for you guys to partner together. Sharing content, maybe not as relevant for, say, an e-commerce, but if you're a travel company and one of the growth hacks that you want to do is to do a lot of content so that you bring people in that way through Google search. There is no point in recreating a ton of content if it's already out there. If you can partner with someone else and use their content to put it on your site, and then it's a win-win, because maybe you can direct traffic their way or backlink to them, and then you get that content. The other thing is influencer campaigns. So I think especially for some of the different verticals like e-commerce and travel, they work really, really well, because people generally like to look for recommendations or people that they follow to think about buying a product or service. So some of the things that you want to think about if you are putting a partnership program in place is that you want to be creative. So I think it's really easy to get stuck into thinking of, specific ways that you're going to work together. But what we've tried to do is look at, what does it make sense for us to do? So we've done things from shared content to creating content for other people to even doing like private competitions and things like that. So you just want to make sure that you think of different ways that are a little bit outside the box so that you can leverage each other's strengths and each other's communities as well. So the other thing is be genuine. So go into it with the idea that you're trying to help each other, and it's not like you're just going to screw them over. So the next point is related to that. So you want to make sure that you clearly outline what the benefit is to both sides. So going into a partnership, you want to make sure that you understand, what is it that they're going to bring to the table, and then what is it that you're going to bring to the table. Make sure that both sides understand what that is. Obviously, it's not guaranteed, but at least you understand what your strengths are. And then, at the end of the day, it's not like anyone was deceived because you both knew what you were going to bring to the table. You also want to outline the responsibilities and what that partnership will look like really, really clearly, so that it's clear from day one what each party is expected to do, because you don't want to get into a situation where, you know, one party thinks that they're going to do something and then another party thinks that they were going to do something else, and then both parties are disappointed. So it's always good to kind of get everything in writing so that you understand what each person is going to do. And then you want to set a timeline. So I always say that it's best to test something out for a short period, you know, anywhere from kind of probably a week or two to a month, and then reassess at that point, because especially if it's something that is going to require a lot of work, you want to do small tests up front first to see if it's something that actually makes a lot of sense before you keep doing it. And then finally, again, you know, tracking is so important. You want to make sure that you understand how successful that campaign is to see if you want to continue it. So, you know, whether you're using UTM links, which are like tracking links, so you can actually see how many of those people who clicked on that link actually came to your page. So you can check that on Google, or if you do something deeper through an app or something. And again, if you have questions about the tracking, then I can speak further to that afterwards, because there's a lot to dive into with just tracking. So one example of a partnership deal that we're doing right now is that there's another game called Crypto Pop. So they give away free crypto if you play their games daily. And it takes a really, really long time to actually get any significant amount, but you know, people like it because it's a fun game, and then you might as well get something while you're doing it anyway. So we are running a partnership cross promotion deal with them. We've been doing it for a month, and they've sent us 12,000 clicks in that month, and we haven't paid anything for it. And we've gotten 1,000 installs of our app, and about, I think 65% of those people actually have come back more than once. So these people who they are driving traffic to us for, they're really high quality users. So, you know, that's a campaign that we did that didn't cost any money, and they're really high quality users. So these are things that you want to think about doing that will help you guys get more users and leverage someone else's user base in a way that's beneficial for both sides. Okay, thanks, that's it. Here's my contact information. If you guys have any questions after this or want to chat about anything, then feel free to email me or send me a message on Twitter. I'm happy to respond.
Okay, thanks, Cynthia. And we'll go into a question and answer Q&A section. So if you have questions, please let us know in the chat box, and then we'll turn on your video or audio to for you to ask the questions. No questions? Anyone? Someone is typing, so. Okay.
Thanks, Howard.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, I can send, well, actually Kenneth has the slides, so he can share them.
Yes, I'll email them to you. Okay. Let's see.
Oh, yes. So Eddie has a question about A/B testing. So A/B testing is this idea that you want to test one version of your product against another version, because you don't know what is best. So you want to put 50% of your visitors through one, and then the other 50% through another. And then depending on the higher conversion, that's what you usually end up going with. So for example, on your website, if you're an e-commerce store, then you would want to test different copies. So if, for example, you're selling, I don't know, oh, I know, you're selling a face mask. Maybe one theory that you have is that you want to talk about protection and safety. And then maybe another theory is that you want to scare people because you think that that's going to sell more. So one thing that you would test is say, hey, we're like the most safe mask out there. We filter down to like 0.0000001 micron or whatever. And then the other copy could be like, avoid death, use our mask. So these are things that you want to test out. These are things that you want to constantly iterate and test on as well, because every batch of users that comes to your website is different. And so you want to always be optimizing for that, because as time goes on as well, your value proposition might change. And so you want to make sure that you're understanding what speaks to people and what converts better. So in terms of A/B testing services, so one of the things that we use is Google Optimize. It makes it really easy for you to test different elements. So you can do things like change copy or change different icons really easily. And then they actually tabulate all the results for you. So it's pretty clear for you to see, which version is better. There's other A/B testing tools, or you can kind of like build your own, but I would say Google Optimize is the easiest, especially just to get started with while you're in the beginning. Plus it's free to use. Optimizely is another one, but that's a paid tool. So I would say if you're kind of just starting out, Google Optimize is pretty robust enough for you to be able to test out what you want. I don't know too much about e-commerce in particular, so I haven't heard of PickFu. I'm not really sure if someone else has, maybe. So I do have some friends in e-commerce though, so I can get back to you and see if there's any that they recommend.
So Holden wants to know, can you talk about how you validate the idea in paying and grew the first 100 users when you start?
Yes, so we didn't do it the right way, so we didn't really validate the idea. And the reason for that is because when we first started, it was just really supposed to be a fun project. So we had a friend who had invested a lot of money into Bitcoin. On paper, he was a Bitcoin millionaire. And so about a month after he bought most of his Bitcoin, the market crashed. And so he went from being like a millionaire on paper to like, I don't know, 100,000, dollars in net worth. So it's pretty crazy. And that's kind of why we had the idea to build this. But it wasn't really meant to be like kind of like a full-term project in the beginning. And the reason why we actually ended up deciding to go forward with it was because as we started to get more users, we would interview people, because there were people who were winning our competitions all the time. So we wanted to see what their strategies were. And we were talking to a few of these people, and they're like, oh, I'm on your site like 12 hours a day. And I'm like, what are you doing? Do you not work? But because of that, we saw that there was a need for it. And so that's why we decided to build it out more. But I would say that if you're going to do it the proper way, one, you want to look at the market sizing. So, is the market big enough for you to actually sustain a business for this? And you can do a lot of research on this. If you have any questions about actually how to do market sizing, then you can email me afterwards. But I would definitely recommend that you look at market sizing first, because if it's something that's really niche, you want to understand if it's big enough for you to actually sustain your business. And also depending on what your goal is. So if you want to become like $1 billion startup, but your market size is only 100 million, that's obviously not going to work. So you want to make sure you understand that. And then also understand like kind of your niche first, and then how you're going to expand beyond that. In terms of getting your first 100 users, so I think the community aspect is really, really important. Know where your target users are going to be, and then go there. So I actually have another like project that I'm still involved in. So it's called AirHost Forum, and that one is the largest Airbnb host community globally. And when we started in 2014, we started with 0 users. And what I did was that I knew that people who had questions about this, they lived on different places, like mostly sites or forums or things like that. So we actually went to all of those places and posted news articles or answered people's questions, or, you know, asked other people questions. So we just engaged with our target users and then brought them back to our site. So I would say that's the best way to kind of grow the first 100 users, because that's like the most on the ground, and those are going to be the most targeted as well. So make sure that you build your profile of what your different users look like. You want to make sure that you understand your personas too, because each user probably is going to have different needs. So you want to make sure that you understand what those needs are.
Perfect. So Matt wants to know how you're generating the volume of content for HARO and Box, and what tools are you using to write and research and edit copy?
So I was doing a lot more, and I'm not doing as much anymore, just because we don't really need it for SEO, because our SEO is pretty high. But I'm pretty basic. I just use Google Docs for this. I know that there's some writing tools. I can actually, maybe I can share with you, Kenneth, and then you can send them out afterwards. But there's a bunch of different tools where you can use it to help you with the writing part and then editing. I have a degree in English Lit, so I've done a lot of writing. So it's a little bit different for me because I do have a lot of experience in writing. But if you guys have any questions on how to edit copy, or like want me to look over something, I'm happy to do that, because I love editing, which is really good editing.
You can help us do it.
Yeah.
Our event copies and marketing copies.
Yeah. That's like my life.
Yeah. That's good.
And then in terms of the research part, so I do a lot of research. So depending on the topic, you want to make sure that you're kind of like looking at what else is out there first, and then thinking about that when you put it into your content. So for HARO, not as much, because they tend to be quite short. But if you're writing a blog article, I probably do, I would say probably at least like 10 hours of research, if not more, as I'm writing the content, because I want to make sure that I fully understand the article and the content itself. And then I know what other people are writing, because I want to make sure that I write something slightly different, or at least more comprehensive. And then that also gives you an idea of what is out there, so that you can write something different.
That's good. Glenn has a question. Then any new games along the line? And are you making new stuff for your product line?
So we're not building any new games, because even just building one game takes a lot of work. And we're a pretty small team, so we don't really have as much resources as we need to do this. But, the idea is that in the near future.
Okay. Do we have more questions from the audience? We have no more questions, then normally we'll do a one-off, a pause for for Cynthia, but you guys can do it on the side, and then Cynthia will notice that. Okay.
Well, thanks to everyone for attending.
Yeah, thanks Cynthia for sharing. Yes, we can type out the crabs. Yeah, we still need to figure out how to do this, online events, because we're probably going to turn into online events for the foreseeable future, for at least the next few months, I think. So we have a few events coming up in April. So on the 7th, we have another webinar on digital marketing. And Warren from Olo Metrics will share about transformational message framework. So you'll be able to learn how to do digital marketing. And then on April 16th, we have a online fireside chat interview with Brian from Begin. So we'll post those events shortly. And I think the April 7th event is already up. So if you're interested, feel free to go to our event page to sign up for a ticket. We are doing free tickets for our online events in the next few months. So, go in and grab your ticket as early as possible. Okay, so Cynthia, do you have any more things to add before we kind of turn into like a networking part of things?
No, just thanks for everyone for coming. And then if you have any questions, then please do feel free to reach out, because I love helping people. So just, feel free to just send me an email. And then if you're interested in crypto, then check out our app.